after that, I did end up moving back home. I spent some time in Vancouver living down there. Moved back home. I started my own excavation company, doing dig outs, mostly residential dig outs for houses and that sort of thing. I am married. I've been married for, I'm glad my wife's not here, because if I don't get this right, she would really nail me on it. 13 years, and I have a 5-year-old daughter who just started kindergarten yesterday, her first day of school, and I have a 3-month-old son. So, got 2 kids at home. They keep me plenty busy aside from the county commissioner gig. I will share one brief story from my history that sort of really initially prompted the wheels turning on government and how it works or how it doesn't work a lot of times. At my time at the Washington State Patrol, I recall I was a dispatcher there, and we each had our own individual consoles. And I remember a time the manager came out of her office. I'd only been working there, I think, less than a year at the time. And she came out of her office, and she had a pamphlet, and she came out just in a tizzy, and going around and talking to each of the different dispatchers and talking to the sort of the supervisors. There's a couple supervisors on shift. And it was really interesting. It really caught my attention because I thought I hadn't seen her this worked up before. And I thought, is this normal? As a new guy, you're kind of still feeling things out. Well, come to find out, I was asking some folks next to me. I said, what's she all worked up about? And it turns out she was going around to everybody. It was the end of their budget calendar. And she was concerned because they had $6,000 left in their budget they hadn't spent. And she was worried that if they don't spend that money, then they won't get at least that same budget for the next year. And so when the person told me, says, oh, she's worried she needs to spend $6,000 because she has that left in her budget. And I asked, very naively, isn't that a good thing? Isn't it good to come in under budget? And he was my direct supervisor, and he chuckled and said, that's just not the way things really work around here. So lo and behold, we all ended up with new chairs. And they were comfortable, but in my opinion, they were unneeded. So my experience there, getting to witness things and be involved in that sort of stuff, really is what sort of initially, that's been 10, 12 years ago at least. So it really kind of is what forayed me into thinking and learning more about government and the government processes and budgets and that sort of thing. Sort of an anecdotal little story that I like to share. So I'm married, 2 kids, did an excavating business. I've had a bit of an eclectic background, a little bit of everything sort of thing. And now as a commissioner coming in, I didn't know how the workload, how it was sort of divided up. And it turns out they take a third, 3 commissioners, so you get a third you are what's called a liaison over a few of the different departments. So I thought, for interest, my time here, I don't have a full 30 minutes. I do have to go to a Southwest Clean Air board meeting at 2 o'clock, but I wanted to introduce myself. Mr. Dreyer was nice enough to invite me here to sort of meet folks and introduce myself. But I thought a little bit of insight into maybe through my eyes of what it's like coming into something like this. But yeah, so they break up the 3 different break the departments into thirds. And so just a few of my assignments as a county commissioner include, I got the newbie assignments. So, but there are the corrections, which includes the jail, adult probation, and law enforcement records. The auditor, the assessor, the treasurer, committee called SILWAC. This is probably one of my biggest hurdles to get over in the position so far has been acronyms. Everybody speaks in acronyms, and it's virtually learning a new language. And people got tired of me stopping them mid-sentence and saying, you need to speak in full sentences so I understand what it is you're talking about, because they would rattle on and off all these acronyms. But SILWAC a lovely acronym. Silver Lake Watershed Advisory Council. So that's a group that's looking at the water quality concerned and looking at ways to improve the water quality in Silver Lake up in my neck of the woods. Beyond that, I am liaison for the event center, which includes the fair and the tourism department, liaison for the museum, as well as the WSU extension here in town. A few of the bigger issues that I personally have come across and I've had to deal with in some way, shape, or form. I thought I'd take note of some of the bigger ones. There's been many now, 8 months into this. But of course, the ongoing issues out at Mount Solo landfill, and that's in the middle of litigation. I can't speak too specifically about it, but yeah, we're looking at ways to, the county is responsible, even though that's a privately owned landfill, the county is required by state law to make sure that it is in compliance for health standards. So that is ongoing, and it is quite a mess when a privately owned landfill, the owner claims bankruptcy and is finding out who has responsibility for it, and making sure it's in compliance is quite a task. And we're sort of right in the middle of that. I sit on the 504 advisory, the 504 corridor committee, and that's a group that's district specific, so that one did directly go to me. That's a group. We are looking at ways to improve economic development up 504 and trying to utilize Mount St. Helens, the wonderful thing we have in our backyard, trying to utilize that to its fullest for tourism and also just for local folks for recreation. And it's no big secret, but the ongoing issue there is the key to the whole thing is access. If there's no access, if you go up the highway and you can't do anything once you get to the end of the road, it's kind of turns people off, and they go, and it's a one-day trip. They go and they leave, and the idea is, what can we do to get them to stick around to pull more dollars out of their wallet, spend more money in our community. And so I am on that, and we're looking at a variety of different things. The Forest Service sits in that group as well. So all the interested parties are at the table, and discussions are had. Sometimes, the whole access thing is really tough, especially right now with Weyerhaeuser charging for access, and the Forest Service, saying everything is essentially off limits once you get off the highway. So it is a challenge, and I am discovering that's why things do take so long to seem like progress to be made. Another thing associated with tourism is that I got to work on. It was the very end stages of this project, but something called the Fire and Ice Scenic Loop, and I don't know if people have heard of it. Yeah, they've had some open house on it, but this is multi-county, so the Council of Governments, Wahkiakum Cowlitz Council of Governments, is the one that spearheaded this, and it's essentially they came up with a marketing plan. So it's a way to include sections of Cowlitz County, Lewis County, Clark, and Skamania, and it's about promoting not only the paved roads and highways, so 503, 504, but this is also about including and marketing and letting people know the routes that are available on the Forest Road 25 specifically, that you can connect all the way from Highway 14 all the way to Highway 12 in Lewis County. And not a lot of people know there's a lot of recreational opportunities back there, lakes and trails to go on. So that's one thing that I was involved in at the very end, and it's just now they have their final draft. It's actually out on the Council of Governments website if anybody cares to look at it, but it's a pretty hefty document itself. Probably the biggest thing that I have been involved in to this point has been, and I know Mr. Von Rock and Mr. Dreyer have heard me go over this stuff before, but I apologize, you guys have heard most of this. But the biggest thing that I've been involved in personally has been what's the facilities report. So prior to my arriving at the county, last year about this time, so almost a year ago exactly, the county forked out $212,000 and paid that to a consultant, Meng, M-E-N-G, Meng Analysis, out of Tacoma, I believe. And they were paid to do an assessment of all of the county facilities, all the county-owned buildings, and getting an idea of sort of what condition they are in, where they're at, what's needed, and putting a price tag on that. And so I got to be involved in that as I came in. They started the study right before I came in, and they completed it. And so now we actually have the report. And I thought it might be interesting to share sort of what some of the highlights of the findings in that report are, because it's going to have a profound impact on the future of our county government. It's going to be a big hurdle budget-wise. So, like I said, the facilities report, we initiated that back in 2014, cost $212,000. That included 12, their assessment was of 12 buildings. So their assessment was broken into two parts, deficiencies and renewables. Deficiencies are the short-term items, so things that they observed and said these really need to be addressed right now. Well, when I say now, that's relative, so it's a 5-year span. They say these you need to start chipping away at these things within the next 5 years. And that total on that amount, so that stuff, those deficiencies, total $24 million. So they're saying the county needs to address $24 million worth of deficiencies in their buildings and facilities within 5 years. No surprise, but that won't happen. So then the other portion of the report is called renewables. So renewables are the long-term items. So those are things that have a lifespan, everything has a lifespan, and that's more of a down the road, a long-range idea of what we need to plan for to address these when the time comes and not be stuck in a situation where we don't know what to do when some major repairs are needed. So that's the 20-year, the long-term outlook, and the cost on that is $84 million. So they're saying in over 20 years, the county is looking at $84 million, and that's an estimate. But some of the three top things that were found in the report, the three buildings that really need to be addressed the most are the Hall of Justice, the Juvenile Center, and the administration building in Kelso. For instance, the Hall of Justice, they said in their report, the skeleton or the bones of the building are very good. It's a stout building. Really where some of the issues come into the roof itself. I mean, they every year, talking to the mechanics, the maintenance department with the county, they're up there having to patch holes and run around and play catch up and keep up, when really it's to the point now where the whole roof really does need to be replaced, and they're having significant water issues every year. Just this last year, I heard they had buckets in Superior Court Judge Evans' office because the water was getting in from somewhere. They eventually found it, but it's a difficult roof to repair, which makes it even more expensive because it's a flat roof and it's covered in gravel. So it's going to take a pretty monumental effort, and probably not many folks get the pleasure of touring the roof of the Hall of Justice, but it is quite the fiasco up there. There's stuff everywhere. They even lease out part of the roof space to a cell phone company to get some revenue, but now they have these contraptions up there that the cell phone companies put up there. So there's a lot to deal with regards to changing out the roof of the Hall of Justice. Another thing, 911. They said 911 are emergency communications. We need to find a new home for it. It's pretty bad when you're 911, who's supposed to be there when there's an emergency, such as a flood, is itself located below the floodplain. So that's something that has been on the radar, and I mean, it's no secret for a long time, but it's only a matter of time. If we got a significant flood, that place they'd be in water, and where would we be? We wouldn't have 911 there when we needed it. The morgue, the county morgue. In today's age, I know it's easy to believe what you see on TV, and most TV shows now, the crime shows, CSIs and whatnot. Everything is state of the art, high tech, but that's in Hollywood, where they have a lot of money to make sets. And our morgue is actually, it's pretty amazing to see what the conditions they work in and the importance of their work, and to see that they are able to actually do it. It's something to behold. It's commendable to the group that are over there. And it's the thing they found in the report was, and I'll quote them, it said the morgue is a small residential building trying to do a big technical job. The use does not fit the building and is in poor condition overall. It's rotting. It's an old building, and it was a residential building that, out of need, they just moved into, and they've been living in it and doing their job and doing it well. But it's high time that they have the appropriate facility to do that important work. So all of that, that's a 400-page document, this facilities report. So it's quite lengthy. It's not the easiest read in the world. I mean, if you have trouble sleeping at night, it's excellent because it really can help you drift off. I think they did put it online. I think they did. But if anybody would like a hard copy, you're welcome to stop by my office and flip through it. It's quite the book. Sorry about that. But that leads me directly into that, speaking on the budget. Right now, the county is entering into its budget season. And just this last Tuesday, we heard our initial report from our Director of Finances, Claire Hagee. And really, this is a $212,000 report that this Ming did. And nothing says government more than spending money on a report and sliding it up on the shelf and pulling it off once in a while and polishing it up and saying, well, what a pretty report we have. But it doesn't really do you much good unless you use it for what it was meant, which is a tool. And that report, I feel, in my opinion, is a tool that the county needs to use as a guiding document for helping to lay out the budget. I think it has to be made a priority. That's what a budget is setting your priorities. And the facilities, based on the report, needs to be a priority. We need to look at what we can afford to do right now and develop and implement a plan to set money aside to begin addressing facilities needs. It's something the county really hasn't set a lot of money aside for to address future needs. I mean, I think all of us who have own a home, we know, at a certain point the roof needs replaced, siding needs replaced, maybe windows need replaced, heat pumps need replaced. So that is something that the county has really lagged behind in, and we are limited on resources. I definitely understand the struggle, but what good spending $212,000 of taxpayers' money and not doing something with that tool? I believe it's vital, and I know my voice during the budgeting process is going to be, at least we cannot spend $24 million. We don't have $24 million. We can't take a chunk of that and spend it this year. I understand we have to start developing a plan, set priorities, pick out of that report exactly what we need to do, what are the absolute must need to do, and start picking those off, scratching them off the list one by one. However much we can set aside, that's what we need to do. But we need to keep that in our mind at all times through this budget process, that we have some money that we start squirreling away, if you will, to address these issues, because they're not going to go away. Anybody knows that if you don't If you don't replace a section of your house that's got some rot in it, it only gets worse over time. The biggest issue I see in the budget process is that we're charged with is really deciphering, as the departments bring forward their wish lists on what they want for the new year, is we have to decipher between what are wants and what are needs. And a lot of times those wants are disguised as needs. And so that's part of what we have to do is set those priorities and be clear about the difference between a want and a need. What do we absolutely have to do, and what is it that we are just saying we want to do? Because we really don't have the money to do both. That then forays me a little bit into the road fund, which has been a big part of the county's budget for 22 years. So for 22 years, the county has been shifting or diverting road fund money in the total amount of $25 million. Now, $20 million of that $25 million has been shifted in the last 11 years. And they're doing this to balance the budget, to fill the void at the end of the budget process. We say, oh, we're short $3.5 million road fund. That's essentially what's been. I'm oversimplifying it a bit, but I don't have enough time to go into all the details. But in the last 3 years, so 2013, the county shifted $1.8 million. 2014, the county shifted $2.1 million. And in 2015, the shift was the biggest ever at $3.2 million. So a lot of people ask, what's the big deal? What effect does this have on county operations? Well, there are some that say, not that big a deal. The road fund's got enough money in it. But there are effects. If you look back at the history during that 22 years, wherever there's a big jump in a shift from the road fund, correspondingly, you will find where we stopped doing something. So for example, in 2006, we stopped recrowning the roadways. So when the county does their chip seal and does their road maintenance, we have stopped crowning them. So crowning them, for folks that don't know, is a slight rise. From the center of the road, it drops just ever so slightly, not really visible that well with the naked eye, but allows water to shed off of it. And it helps keep the life of the road, just keeps it better. We stopped in 2006 because of the shift. We stopped doing that. In 2009, we stopped replacing fish culverts. A lot of that money for fish culverts does come from the federal government, but we get grants from the federal government, but we have to have a match in order to get those grants. Now, if we don't have the match, we're not eligible. So in 2009, with another spike in the road fund shift, we had to stop replacing fish culverts. Just as a small quiz, and I don't know if Rick remembers these numbers, but as a small quiz, I'll ask, maybe if somebody knows, how many miles of road, county road, do we maintain? Anybody have a guess? It's 528 miles of just the county roads. So we're not talking I-5 or any of the state roads. So 528 miles of road to keep up and keep in good shape, so people can go to work and take care of their business. Along with that, how many culverts do you think are in Cowlitz County? Public Works is charged with upkeep. 3,422. The average culvert has a lifespan of 50 years. And we used to be replacing them on a routine schedule. We no longer are doing that. What's happening is we wait until the culvert fails. It collapses, plugs up, breaks, whatever, which only causes more problems because now the road can get damaged. Now you've got a bigger expense to fix, but we just can't afford to be replacing these on a time schedule, which should be happening. Instead, we literally have to wait until the culvert fails before we will address it, when it becomes an emergency, essentially. And lastly, on my little quiz, how many bridges are in Cowlitz County. County bridges, not state bridges. 65. And when you start talking about bridge replacement, it quickly gets into the millions of dollars. And to me, it's important, and it relates exactly to the facilities report, because if we do not keep ourselves disciplined and rein in what we shift, I'm not saying we can totally quit shifting money. It took us 22 years to get to where we are. But I think that we really need to start and have a good idea of how to be disciplined and stick with a plan and rein in, pull back on that shifting to make sure there's plenty of money in the road fund to take care of the things that need to be taken care of. Because if we don't, we've seen what happens, for example, with the facilities report. If you let things go, it only grows exponentially. And I really don't want to see, our road system is our very basis of our county infrastructure, really.
Joe, I have heard that Kelso no longer has a road department at all.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I've been told that for 3 years they don't have one, that the money has been diverted to the police department because they need the officers, and that the money, and this is from a county road crew that was repairing the hole on the street buses, and that they just don't have the funds to have a road department.
I knew that the county did some work for them, but I didn't know they didn't have a road department at all.
They do not have a road department.
If you notice, if you live in Kelso and they put on an extra $20 on your license, that goes into the road district.
Well, this was from a
Yeah,
crew that just fixed the thing out in front of our house, and they said they did not have a road department.
Yes, they do.
Well, I don't know, is what I was just told.
If you get $20 taken out of the additional $20 that was charged on your license fee, that goes into the road district.
Well, we have a big divot up around Allen Street, and he said they're not fixing it because of that. I don't know.
Just finished on Minor Road.
Well, the county problems are not only the ones in a bit of a crunch. The cities are too. It's all the way around.
A lot of trouble.
I'll wrap up. I don't want to bore too many people, but
Need arguments.
I'll just go over briefly some things I've learned in my time here. First and foremost, as with most things in life, this is the big sandbox of life, as I'll call it, and we all have to figure out a way to get along. And the biggest thing I think I've learned through this whole process thus far is that principle applies at all times. Teamwork. Without teamwork, nothing will get done. I don't care who you are. No one's going to Lone Ranger anything. It just isn't the real world. I mean, without support and reaching out and asking for help and being willing to help yourself, you are not going to get a whole lot accomplished. So that's been just a very, number one on my list, as far as you got to always keep that in mind, and that's extremely important now more than ever. Secondly, when you do run into something that you feel passionate about, you got to learn how to pick your battles, because on a daily basis you can find things that frustrate you and you don't agree with, and you want to change this or do that. But there isn't enough time in the day, and there isn't enough energy, enough gas in the tank to take on every single thing that you feel should be taken on. So you have to strategize, you have to learn to think a little longer range, and be patient. But learn to pick out those things that you can see happening sooner rather than later, because you can quickly start to spin your wheels. You have to know where to get information. And I say that because in the idea that lots of times you'll be presented with something, or somebody's really upset about something, and someone's prodding you to do something, take action based on their information. Well, you really have to know who to go to get the other side of that. And lots of times it isn't just two sides. Lots of times to issues there's 3, 4, 5 sides. And knowing where to go to get the information you need to help formulate decisions is key. It's very important. And lastly, I preach this every time I get a chance to talk to groups, but never ever forget that one person can make a difference. You can't, as I said before, go out and Lone Ranger and do it all yourself, but it's a domino effect, because if you say something, if you see something that could be better, could be improved, something that's wrong that should be righted, just know that it's a domino effect, because all you have to do is find the right person to go ask to help address this, and as working together, that will bring about change. And I think a lot of people think, it's not worth it. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to bother that person. Nothing will happen anyway. Things do happen, and they only happen when things get brought to light. So I urge everybody to go find somebody, come knock on my door. Whoever it is you need to talk to, don't be afraid, and don't say that change won't happen and things can't be made better, because they can, and they are, and they will be made better. I promise you that. One specific example that I have, and I'll end on this, is I was approached by a gentleman who's a contractor. He does septic replacements, and he came to me and said, this really doesn't make sense. I'm sorry for bothering you. I probably can't, not much happen about it anyway, but when I do a septic replacement, it's really ridiculous that somebody from the county, from one department, comes out and has to inspect the line from the house to the tank, and I have to pay them to inspect that, and then another person from a different county department has to come out and inspect the line from the tank to the drain field and sign off on that, and I have to pay them for an inspection. Why can't one person come out and inspect the whole thing? And I thought, well, that's a good question. Makes sense to me. And he came to me, he knocked on my door, brought it up. I went downstairs, knocked on someone else's door, a couple of doors in fact, got the ball rolling in that respect, and lo and behold, we addressed it. It's changed. Now it's, when somebody comes out to do an inspection, they made an agreement with the two different departments, came to a mutual agreement that one person can come out and inspect. It cuts down the cost on the homeowner, cuts down on time for the contractor to come in and deal with two different entities. So yeah, that seems like peanuts, but that's how things happen. Things grow exponentially, things snowball. So I just encourage people to, if you see something, say something. So that's it for me. Thank you.
I've got a question for you anyway.
Okay.
I can let you go yet. On Tuesday, when I was at the meeting, I stood up to address the labor dispute.
Yeah.
Now, are you aware if any of the commissioners have come down to the line yet and talked to any of our people?
I am not aware. I don't know.
And the second thing, what's going on tomorrow? They're having an injunction hearing that Judge Warren will be in. What do you think of the ability for the judicial system to infringe on your right of speech and your right to assemble according to our Constitution of the United States?
Boy, I don't know the specifics of the injunction.
Yeah, these are basic freedom of speech.
Right,
and
freedom of and I agree with those.
Right. So do you think the judicial system, as a part of our government, should have the right to infringe on that?
On your freedom of speech?
And assembly.
Just as a basic person in the United States of America.
I would hope that would not be the case.
Well, hopefully we can get that word out. Because I think when we start infringing, again, I know everyone has their problems with government, but government was established to take care of the needs of the people, just not the corporations. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
One more comment. I would hope, and I know tensions are high because of this strike situation. However, I would hope, and I haven't seen too much from hearing from the pickets that are on the line, that our sheriff's departments are definitely not have enough empathy for the people there. For the Capstone Company, yes. But you know what? It's our tax dollars also paying their fees. It's coming from us as taxpayers. We elected these people into office. That's all my comment is. I would like that to filter down.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment regarding that. In my opinion, mistakes were made with the longshore strike. I think that some of those issues have been addressed. And this is a very high-tension situation. People have not went through a 6-month strike like we have. There's going to be mistakes or whatever. So I think that you can say that law enforcement is showing restraint, and I hope that that will continue.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I've, for the most part, from what I've heard good things about the law enforcement's presence there, and
Not for our picking people.
okay.
But we do want to thank you for coming.
Thank you. Didn't mean to.
Thanks, Rick.
put you on the spot.
No, it's all right.